Without further ado, let's make some more noise for Joe Cohen. Let's do it.
Thank you, sir.
Joe, you want to share? No. Fine.
I'll be too. All right. So a little about me and why I can talk about blockchain. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in cybersecurity for the past couple of years. I've been developing for the past better part of 10 years. I've always been into computers. I got my first computer when I was like 6 years old, and I fell in love. Earlier this year, I started investing in and trading different cryptocurrencies, and the market started to change. There was this huge pop with everything, and all these new technologies came out, all these new projects were starting to come out. And so, within that space, there were a lot of people looking to scam others, take their money, whatever. So I was part of this community on a chat room, for lack of a better term, Discord. And the developer just kind of ran off, took everybody's money. And so, with my skills in hand, I said, I'll step up. I'll take over the repo, and I'll help the community. I'll bring the blockchain back to life and all that. And I didn't know what I was taking on then, but I was like, all right, let me jump in and do it. So at that time, I met another person on the chat there, and we kind of partnered up and just started getting to work, in our hands dirty. It took us, several months to get over the learning curve for the blockchain technologies. The specific one that we were working with was C++, which I hadn't worked with in years, so I had to refresh myself on that. And so there was a bunch of challenges, but needless to say, we slugged it through, and we learned a lot, and it was a really good experience. So, yeah, blockchain. What is it? So basically, the blockchain is comprised of different packets of information, if you will. Each block is linked to every other block by shared information. At the end of the day, the blockchain comprises a story about information, where it came from, and how it changed to get to the point that it's at. So you have this kind of absoluteness to it. It doesn't change as it goes on. So in general, each block takes a little bit of information from the last one that comes along, and it kind of pairs that with other information, timestamps, network information, versions, sequence info, all this different stuff, transactions that are going on in the network. For whatever the implementation use case is, you could have different types of data stored in each block. Some people put pictures in there or other things like that, and so that information is forever part of the blockchain, and everyone has it, and it's available to everyone. So blockchains are distributed networks, and blocks are discovered by solving cryptographic algorithms. So two people can solve the same block algorithm at the same time, which you could potentially have forks in the chain. But the way it works is, whoever gets confirmed by the rest of the network first, they become the true head of the blockchain, and everyone else says, okay, this is where the blockchain is at right now, and we take that as absolute truth. So as you go on and new blocks are found on the blockchain, you could have smaller forks of that information locally, but eventually, as soon as you confirm with the network, you'll get to the right blockchain. If I sound like I'm stammering, it's because I get nervous talking in front of people.
Doing great, Joe.
All right. So basically, the network, has a bunch of different types of clients on it, talking to each other, coming to this consensus about information, confirming things with each other, and passing information back and forth. You might have clients or nodes that are, talking to only two of their peers, confirming that information. And you might have some that are talking to like 30, and that can vary based on geographic location. So if you have too high of a ping between those two clients, they might reject communications. If they're sending like faulty packets, they'll ban them from their network interactions. Different measures are in place to prevent things like DOS attacks and other stuff of that nature. So mining is a big part of blockchain. This is how Bitcoin started, well, it still is, with their discovery of blocks. So, at first it was, okay, well, everybody can get in on this and they can be part of this. We can decentralize it. So, I can have my rig over here mining, and, depending on the algorithms chosen and the different statistics of implementing the blockchain, they could be more GPU or CPU friendly depending on how the algorithms are solved, because each component is better at one type of math or another. So this kind of brought along some very interesting evolutions of technology and things. Some groups started up these farms just trying to mine as many Bitcoins as they can, especially as they went to market and the price rose. They realized, oh, this is really profitable. We can just dump as much money as we can into, picking up these miners. These are called ASIC miners, and they're standalone units designed specifically for doing this stuff. So, they just stock the shelves with them and go to town. And, that's had some interesting implications. I think the global energy use is off the charts at this point, and is basically unsustainable growth to continue mining Bitcoin and being profitable. So that's kind of had some very interesting ramifications. So another aspect of the blockchain is the difficulty in solving for those blocks. So as miners discover blocks by solving this algorithm, you have this difficulty modifier that kind of changes how difficult it is to find that solution. So if blocks are being done too quickly, it'll raise it, or vice versa. And this is to prevent someone from, say, mining the entire blockchain in 1 minute, and in the case of cryptocurrency, them getting all the coins on the chain that are allotted. So this is directly related to the hash rate on the network. So each miner will be able to solve a certain amount over time. Usually people are mining in like the mega hashes per second or gigahashes per second with modern cards. Some people build rigs that are just 5 cards and whatever other essential components, and then just go to town and start mining stuff. This tends to be pretty profitable overall, especially with the market fluctuations and things. They mine for a while, they hold the coin, and they usually sell enough to pay their bills. And people in the space kind of tend to be hoarders of coins, so they'll just keep all the extras forever until they're not worth anything or else has come about. So cryptocurrency specifically. Blockchain can be implemented in many different ways, many different uses and contexts, but this has been the largest, I think, to this date. So for solving blocks in the blockchain, you're given a reward of some coins. With Bitcoin, it's solely miners. So if you solve the block yourself, you get whatever the reward is that they've determined. I don't know if it's one or more Bitcoin. In some implementations, you have other nodes that contribute computation power, so they'll get some of the reward. I'll talk about master nodes in a minute, and they get rewards as well for every block. So there's not a lot of regulation in this space. Some countries have laid down rules just so that they know how to tax people and get their share of the pie. But largely it's either like, okay, we just don't want you doing anything with it, or we don't want you doing anything with certain exchanges or other services, because services have popped up where you can pay your bills. You just send them Bitcoin and they send off a check or whatever to your electric company or something like that. And it's actually kind of interesting. For some of the services, if I were to browse their website, I would get a boilerplate warning page that basically says, you can't access this because of New York State laws. And so they have a little infographic there, and it says the only other two places that don't allow access to these services, just like New York, are Washington State and North Korea. So it's kind of funny because our laws here in New York are equated to basically North Korea.
Do you have an example of one of those? Just like curious, you remember like which one of them was?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I know there's bills.ca for Canada. My co-founding partner is in Canada, so he tells me about all the good services that they can take advantage of, but unfortunately we're limited. But I can look it up and get back to you afterwards. So there's also this other, so basically the SEC has kind of started moving towards regulation and talking about cryptocurrency in a way that they can control it. We've seen the advent of futures markets for Bitcoin and stuff like that, because the big boys want to start throwing their money at it and making some as well. But so there's utility tokens, which basically have a use case. They are not asset backed, so maybe they're used for keeping track of, sports statistics or something like that. And, to post new statistics, you have to pay a coin or whatever. The other one is going to be basically an asset-backed security. So what Ethereum did, which is one of the big three, if you don't know this, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum are pretty much the front runners in the cryptocurrency sector. They've taken a strong foothold, and Bitcoin has so many use cases and people accepting it for payment for services or goods or whatever. But Ethereum, they allow tokenization of currencies through these smart contracts. So basically you say, I'm going to form this other currency, and you can trade Ethereum at X ratio and get back whatever of my coin. So it's essentially an asset-backed security, because you have this real property, this Ethereum token, and you trade it, and now that represents the backing for this token. Generally, these have been referred to as ERC20 tokens, and that's just the protocol that Ethereum implemented for making sure that everyone builds their coin in the same way. So, and that's kind of an interesting example. There's not a lot of governmental regulation in this sector, but there is self-governance in a sense, where we kind of come to a consensus on, what things are good and what's right. And that kind of tends to happen in software development anyway. We say, okay, here's the convention, and we want everyone to follow it. So you kind of see, this system, which is intended to be decentralized, kind of coming to this self-governance. So since this is kind of a security meetup, I'll talk about vulnerabilities. And there are more weaknesses, not necessarily vulnerabilities with blockchain. So the network hash rate, and this is even talked about in the Bitcoin white paper, which I encourage people to read. It's like 7 to 10 pages or something like that, and most of it's pretty high level. There is some math in there, but you can just skip that. I give you my permission. So basically, if you have all these miners going through and discovering blocks and contributing to the overall network hash rate, the higher your hash rate, the more likely it is that you're able to discover blocks. So if a single entity is able to capitalize on at least 51% of the network, the overall network hash rate, they kind of take control because it's most likely that they'll find the next blocks before anyone else. So there's a few ways to exploit that. But that one tends to be one of the biggest vulnerabilities to date, and countless blockchains have been exploited, and currencies have gone the way of the dodo because of it. It causes a lot of issues, public image and everything else. So malicious clients or wallets, most of the wallets, Bitcoin Core is a open source repository on GitHub, and most coins that have been created to date are forks of that. So everybody can see the source code, everybody can compile their own wallets. So in that they can make changes, they can do things to affect how they interact with the network, how they capitalize on block discovery and things like that. So that's been an issue in several of the larger exploits that we've seen lately. So unintended block interactions is really interesting. Like I said before, it may not even be intended, but blocks are capable of containing whatever kind of data you want to send along as you create them from your local wallet. And I have not read on this specifically, but I was told that apparently someone took a blockchain that was capable of holding, whatever information and put up some kiddie porn or something like that. And so now this is on the blockchain forever. And everybody who has a wallet for that blockchain specifically downloads that. And now all those people have kiddie porn on their computer. So, that's not good. So there's some pretty interesting vectors of exploit there. So this is essentially how that hash rate takeover works. Someone sets up their malicious wallet and they have this mining pool software that allows multiple mining rigs to connect to that pool and mine against that wallet and discover blocks. So you just have to spin up enough instances and mine, and then you can get to that 51%. And they even talked about this in the Bitcoin white paper, saying that this was one of the major vulnerabilities. But it becomes less of an issue the more decentralized the system is, the more distributed the processing power becomes. And that's why I feel like it's a good idea to have a mix of mining and what I'll talk about, proof of stake, which allows you to basically distribute workload across the network for client nodes that are not specifically miners. With this model, with the malicious wallet, people are able to craft custom blocks or just manipulate some of the information within them to achieve whatever desired result that they want.
Good job. Quick question. So I think you mentioned earlier owners of this forum that you eventually got involved in. Is this something similar to how they stole assets?
So in that instance, and a lot of instances like that, developers will come out with a coin, build a website, build social media, build all the forums around it, say, oh, we have this great idea, blah, 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 blah. You know, they don't even really know how to develop. They're more like script kiddies, and they go on, they fork these other repos, they make their necessary changes, and they launch their coin. Then they get people to buy right off the bat, and then they just, you know, run off with the money after some amount of time. In some instances, I believe it's, you know, it's just something that they wanted to do right off the bat. Well, I need some money. Let me, you know, take everybody else's. In others, I feel like it maybe comes down to a lack of capability where they started something, realized they couldn't continue on with the undertaking, and just, you know, decided to skip town. And unfortunately, there's very little recourse in this space right now. You know, there aren't easy avenues to take to find people. So some of the clients, most are designed to be able to connect to the network through Tor, or you know, you can connect through proxies, VPNs, whatever. So there are definitely ways to you know, hide your identity and kind of just get away with things without any recourse, which is unfortunate. So I think I actually forgot this slide for it, so I'll just tell you about it. So proof of work is what's referred to, or is how mining blockchain implementations are referred to. So, you know, you do this work to solve the block, and you're paid for that, and that's your proof of work. And so the other is proof of stake, and in this implementation, we have these structures called master nodes. And so essentially, you make a transaction, and that transaction is then posted to the network. So everyone knows that you made a transaction of, let's say, you know, 1,000 coins or 50,000 coins, and that record is your proof of stake. So you then launch your master node to help contribute to the workload of the network. And this is just a VPS. You know, most of the time I'll spin up AWS or something like that. And you know, you contribute, and for your time and energy spent, you're paid coins every so often for blocks that are being solved. And so that was a big craze for a while, especially in the beginning to the middle of the year, maybe May, June timeframe. Everybody was investing in these masternode projects that were coming up, because essentially it's just recurring income off of this masternode. And as you know, AWS offers free hosting. So you spin up a free AWS, you get coins coming in, and you just sell them as soon as these projects go to market to a cryptocurrency exchange. You know, this was really bad for the space overall, because a lot of scamming was going on in that area, you know, from developers to communities, but also from person to person, because, you know, Bob would say to Sally, okay, I wanna trade my masternode for your masternode of a different coin. And, you know, there was no route in place for them to trade that safely. So, you know, he would send his and she wouldn't send hers, or vice versa. And, you know, somebody would get screwed over. So there's a lot of phishing going on, a lot of scamming, and things like that. You know, people sending malicious executables. Oh, well, this is going to help you speed up how fast you sync to the network. So run this, and, you know, I'll take all your coins off your hands. So there was a lot of that going on. And that's kind of what motivated me and my partner to build this project and to run with this, because, you know, we didn't like seeing people being taken advantage of, and we wanted to kind of help solve that problem and kind of legitimize the space, you know, because we're nerding out, we're over there trading and investing, and you know, we both know how to code, so we figured, why not? Let's step up and see if we can help people out. So this one is a serious exploit. Verge is a coin, and for the longest time they were touted as being like the most anonymous, and all these security features and stuff. Verge offered 5 different types of algorithms to mine against their blockchain. And they figured, well, let's distribute the workload. You know, the whole principle behind cryptocurrency is to, decentralize and distribute. So let's offer people different ways to mine this coin. So they eventually were exploited, well, twice. And since they had 5 different types, the malicious attackers only had to own one of the 5 for 51% to then start solving for blocks faster than everyone else. So I forget the statistic, but it essentially reduces the amount from 51% down to like less than 2% because they chose an algorithm that not too many people were mining against. So they're then solving for these blocks quickly because they're the only ones in that channel making these calculations, and they compiled their wallet to where they could manipulate timestamps on the blocks. And by default, I guess for some reason, the blockchain accepts any timestamp. So the next block discovered could be 10 hours in the past or maybe a couple days in the future, whatever. And I guess that's because of the decentralized nature of it. We can't all agree right now that this timestamp is the right one. So essentially, they executed what's called a time warp attack, where they manipulate the timestamps on the blocks. They own the majority hash rate for the network. They start producing blocks with these faulty timestamps. So the calculations in the algorithm for difficulty say, oh, well, there hasn't been a block discovered in a while because the last timestamp was, I don't know, a week ago. So let's lower the difficulty to make sure that people can start finding blocks sooner. And so they keep putting that timestamp block in the past, solving for these new blocks. The difficulty is lowered next to nothing. They start solving blocks instantaneously. They run through, I think it was like 1,500 blocks a second or something like that. In the matter of a few hours, they were able to steal, I think, almost $2 million, just worth of coins. Because these coins were on the market on several currency exchanges. So they just basically go in, exploit the blockchain, make all these coins, print the money, and then sell it to people on the exchange. So that's been one of the biggest examples that I could find that just really, they just really did it wrong, because if you get exploited once, the best practice in my mind is to stop, take a look at why you're exploited, where the problems lie in your code, and just fix that. So that's kind of another issue in the space, is there's this general lack of responsibility as maintainers of the code base and developers on the project. So the big picture here, ideally we want global integration for cryptocurrency. You're able to go to the grocery store, the hospital, the office, whatever, anything that you need, you can spend money and use cryptocurrency to buy that. We're getting there. Some banks are starting to take interest, some financial institutions. I think it was Fidelity announced that they're going to make additions to their large-scale investing platforms to allow these large hedge funds and other financial institutions to be able to buy cryptocurrency, buy and sell and whatever. And I think I read Fidelity handles like trillions of dollars a year basically in assets. So they bring a lot of money to the table and also a lot of legitimacy in that sense. There are currently in place several technologies that are kind of helping us along. I think it was 2 or 3 different projects or organizations bought a share in a bank, so they were able to set up a direct crypto to fiat transaction system where basically you can just sell your coins to the bank or however it works, and they'll load cash on a card for you, so you can go spend that at, the corner store or whatever. So we're getting there. There are a couple of services like that. So maybe in the next 5 years or so, as these get adapted more. So some of the current technologies that are pretty interesting, wallets. These can include the client server wallets like I was talking about, basically run on any computer, laptop, whatever. Mobile wallets for both iOS and Android have been developed. Hardware wallets, which are pretty interesting, and a lot of people consider them to be more secure than anything, is just a singular piece of hardware that can, in most cases, I think, hold multiple currencies, which is an issue for most wallets because, different blockchains have different characteristics to them. So you can't just mix and match whatever you want in a singular wallet. Each wallet client is designed to handle that blockchain and, read the different types of data that are coming in. Web wallets, which kind of tend to be most insecure, I think. People have had, funds stolen from various sources because you're essentially storing your coins on their server. And as most of us know, people are really bad at locking stuff down. So, somebody finds a way in. And if they have enough time and motivation, they can find their way into almost anything. So a lot of funds have been stolen that way over the past couple of years. And then one of the most interesting is the paper wallet, where essentially you go on, you create a wallet address, you print it up, you get so there's a private key, public key system for each wallet address where I can recover my wallet from anywhere with my private key, and public keys are used for signatures and stuff like that to verify authenticity. So the paper wallet's been pretty interesting, and different projects have come up with various unique designs and origami inspired things like that. Mining technology, this sector's pretty cool. So mining cryptocurrency definitely helped bump a lot of sales for AMD and whoever the other major manufacturer is for GPUs. We have people throwing 10, 15 GPUs into a rig to, go out and make a bunch of money. And obviously this was way more popular earlier on. So most of this craze started around 2014. And so, over the past couple of years, it has slowed down. You could see these interesting fluctuations from, everybody wanting to mine to everybody wanting to run master nodes to back to mining because, master nodes were a joke and everybody was scamming and blah, 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 So it's been kind of up and down and back and forth, but it's definitely pushed manufacturers to up their game in the hardware sector and, make better products or make prices more affordable, things like that. And then obviously you see this huge sector pop up with standalone units like ASIC miners or other ones of that nature, where you have whole companies just building them because they can't build them fast enough because people are buying them up to mine Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever else. And then these services that are popping up in the cryptocurrency sector, hosting services for masternodes or other related technologies has just boomed in the last 8 to 10 months, where you can launch a VPS and they'll spin up a masternode for you. It's probably, just Docker images or something like that. Some of them you can pay for with cryptocurrency, which is pretty convenient. So basically you're spinning up these servers to make this funny money, paying for it with the same funny money. And, it's a whole system that kind of feeds on itself. Shared income services are pretty cool too. So one person will kind of act as the intermediary, and many different people can send them coins, and they'll accumulate them all and start up a masternode and pay out people in the various ratios that they invested in, whatever the reward might be for that blockchain, or shared staking services. Which is kind of the same thing. Some blockchains implement staking on top of masternodes, which is basically if a masternode is 1,000 coins and I hold 100, I can still earn a reward for contributing to the network just because I have some. Those tend to be really insecure and are exploited a lot. But you see these services coming up, and there's once again competition between all of them because there's so many of them, and they want to take their fees and make their money. And like I talked about, cash cards and ATMs, pretty interesting. There are just Bitcoin ATMs everywhere. A friend of mine recently went down to Puerto Rico, and he's like, there's not much here. The hurricane destroyed a lot. There's some cool spots, but I did find one Bitcoin ATM at least. So, they're around. All right, so about the coin that I developed, we chose this algorithm X16R, which was initially developed by Ravencoin, because this was resistant to those standalone units. It's a conglomeration of several algorithms, and it randomly switches back and forth between them, deciding which one would solve the next block. So it's difficult to develop a standalone unit that would mine this. And it's frankly quite taxing on even just a regular mining rig that you might set up. So they tend to be more secure and more distributed across the network. So, you don't have one large entity with a lot of capital coming in and starting up a farm and being able to farm the blockchain. So that's why we chose that one. So for the difficulty retargeting, this is an algorithm developed by someone that my partner worked with him closely, and so there were a few different types of retargeting algorithms that would basically attack the problem in different ways. So Bitcoin retargets the difficulty for solving blocks every 2 weeks, just arbitrarily. Some of them after that started retargeting every block, thinking that was basically the best choice because, then you didn't have so then it would adjust the difficulty based on how many people were mining. So if, me and one other person are mining against the chain, and then this huge company comes in and the hash rate jumps by 1,000%, all of a sudden it becomes difficult. Maybe it's not really worth their time to do it. So let's retarget every block, and that'll kind of solve that problem, because as soon as they jump on, it becomes super difficult, and it's not really worth their time. There ended up being a lot of exploits related to that design, and that's actually the way that Verge implemented their blockchain. So that was definitely part of it, because, like I said, once you're sending out blocks that are in the past, it's going to retarget that difficulty every single time. So essentially, instantaneously, the difficulty drops to nothing. So to solve some of the issues with the blockchains, I'm not sure, it might have been Dash first that implemented these sporks. It's kind of a way for developers to allow for changes to the code base when they choose. So basically, when a wallet syncs to the network, any client syncs to the network, it runs through the blockchain and it validates that blockchain against the rest of the network. And if there are any issues in the blocks that it's receiving from the network, it won't sync. It'll just stall, and they won't be able to connect and make any transactions. So if I were to take a blockchain and change some of the characteristics of it after it had already been implemented, and let's say change the reward structure on it. So for discovering blocks, I wanted to lower the reward to decrease inflation against the currency. Those clients wouldn't validate those blocks anymore because something about that blockchain has changed. So the way to kind of solve that problem is to add these sporks, where basically you just have this if check. Well, if for X block sequence spork is active, then you're going to look for some new characteristic, and now these wallets will be able to sync. So for our blockchain, we set up, we looked at all the coins that were having these problems and being exploited, and we said, well, you know what? A lot of the times they recognize there's a problem and they just kind of say, well, we have to figure out what the solution is. And time goes on and people are just stealing money from everybody else. And so what we implemented was a way to kill all the wallets on the network so they won't sync anymore. And this would prevent these mining pools from connecting to the network and transmitting these malicious blocks. So basically, if someone starts to exploit the network in a way that we can't stop, we have the ability to send out this message to kill all the wallets, and then we can, come up with the solution and put out the new wallets after that. And the other one was, so we implemented this in-wallet escrow service, and I'll talk about that in a second. But basically, we said, okay, well, this is another piece that we're adding onto the puzzle. So if we want to, at some point, disable it, we should have that capability, even though it's in the hands of the users and distributed across the network. So we added another spork for that. So we can say, there's an issue, there's a vulnerability, something, or we need to do maintenance, so we can just interact with the rest of the wallets and disable the escrow function. And that's basically a public key, private key setup. So we hold the key for the sporks, and we can only activate them using that key. So so kind of like I said before, what inspired us to kind of like take this project on and torture ourselves basically is this all this malicious activity that was going on in the space. So like I said, people were trading masternode coins for other masternode coins or whatever, coins for coins, and we're getting ripped off. So we set up this escrow service. We weren't the first. There were other services out there, but you always had to go and register and go through this whole process. So what we did was we just put it right in our wallet, where basically anybody can download this client. As long as two parties have the client, they can trade between each other. So they, it's a centralized system in the sense that they're sending their coins to our servers to be held in escrow. But as soon as both parties send their coins to the server, they're paid out. So we say, like, if you're making your deposit, you're accepting the terms of the escrow. But there's no registration, there's no anything like that. So we help to keep their anonymity in a sense, and obviously it's trustless. So they don't have to know who they're trading with. It doesn't matter. They swap a PIN and the transaction goes through. So the other thing, after we got into this, we said, well, we have all these exchanges out there, these currency exchanges, and many of them have been exploited. So many coins have been stolen over the years. So many millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars have been stolen. So we wanted to kind of attack that problem. So in our wallet, we've created this auction house, we're calling it. and it's kind of like the eBay model. You say, I want to sell X coin. Here's my period of time. Here's my starting bid. If I want, there's a buyout amount. And then people can make different bids on it. What's especially unique about the system that we're developing is you can take Litecoin, Bitcoin, and Ethereum and put each one of those toward bidding on the coin that you want, which most of the time they have binary pairs. So it'll be exchange to Bitcoin, Litecoin to Bitcoin, Ethereum to Bitcoin, and so on and so forth. So we're kind of just, our kind of vision on it is we want to put the power in the hands of the people and keep this distributed and keep it, give everyone the options basically to kind of interact with it how they want to. So we said, well, might as well be able to bid with multiple currencies. Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting stuff with blockchain. There are other implementations of it besides currencies. Someone recently told me they read a story, someone talking about using it to track food distribution through the United States, let's say. You hear these stories where 7 billion pounds of beef was recalled because, there was some case of whatever. And if we knew every stop along the way where all that beef was handled and scanned, and that was stored on the public ledger, and everybody knew where that went and who handled it, and then we could track these shipments and we wouldn't have to recall so much. That's just one example. There's so many other different implementations of it yet to come and that we have yet to see. So I'm excited to see what's coming in the future. And that's all. Any questions?
Do you have any examples that you know of how it has been attempted to tax currency?
Yeah, so right now the federal government considers it real property. I'm not sure what the tax is on it. Probably somewhere between 15 and 20%, something like that. So basically whatever you buy, they just say, you hold these assets, you pay us based on that.
It's kind of holding you to pay for that.
Yeah, it's such a new technology. I would say 90% of people or more don't understand what they're doing with it. Even people who use it all the time, they're in there, spinning up VPSs. They really have no idea what they're doing. Someone provides them an installation script. They download this wallet and start it up. So yeah, there's really not too much understanding or resources available right now. So, the federal government can't come in and track everybody's usage on it, especially like I said, because, there's so many tools in place to provide that anonymity that in most cases you probably can't track.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the design of it. That's the point of it, right? So they say, fiat is so centralized and it's failing all over the world. Global economies are crashing. Let's figure out a different way to solve this problem.
I'm curious, why or how is the relationship between Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum different from the fiat relationship between the franc, the pound, and the dollar? It seems like in the cryptosphere, that is the relationship, that they're parallel, but the differences have to do with how currencies are exchanged and who are the crypto, who is purchasing those coins and where they are.
Yeah, so that's absolutely true. This is absolute supply and demand wherever the interest lies. Bitcoin is and has been the front runner on this, and because there's a lot of money to spend in the United States, I feel like Bitcoin to USD is pretty much the primary driving factor behind everything. most things are tied to Bitcoin as a binary pair. So any currency you see, it will be paired against Bitcoin for its pricing valuation. You know, I'm not a market expert. I've been doing it for fun. You know, I'm definitely an enthusiast. But I feel like Bitcoin primarily drives the majority of the cryptocurrency sphere, and then also has an effect on the fiat sphere now because of the weight of it in global markets. So when we saw this massive rise in Bitcoin last winter, you know, there were some institutional monies trying to enter the markets, and we saw this pullback. You know, that affected the rest of the markets. The stock market was affected and things like that. So, you know, there's definitely that connection right there, that pair, USD and BTC, I think is the primary driving factor. So we're listed on coinexchange.io and BTC Alpha. I'm not sure where Coin Exchange is based out of. Potentially Europe or America, and BTC Alpha is based out of Russia.
So, I mean, everybody and their mother has like an opinion or like theory as to like where it's going in the future, like 5-10 years down the road. What's your take on it? Like, what's your thoughts? Where do you think Bitcoin's going? How do you think it's gonna?
So, there's you know. You can't argue the fact that Bitcoin is tied into so many things at this point. It's accepted as payment for, you know, innumerable services and products. Like I said, we see Bitcoin ATMs. There's a service called BitPay where you can basically just send them your Bitcoin and they put cash on a debit card for you and you can spend that anywhere. You know, there's so many pieces to it. So I think at this point, cryptocurrency is locked in to the global market space, you know, and transactions are so much faster and so much cheaper than the traditional banking system that, I mean, hundreds or more of these financial institutions are starting to at least latch on to the blockchain technology itself to implement it in their frameworks. So I don't see it going away. You know, like I was just saying, when we see massive fluctuations in Bitcoin markets, we see fluctuations in fiat markets. So at this point, I would argue that it is 100% locked in. I do see markets overall condensing as we go forward. There are so many altcoins that are scams or just useless projects where people, you know, maybe wanted to do something, had a decent idea, and then weren't able to deliver on that. So yeah, I see a lot of that going away. I think right now there's probably between 4,000 and 6,000 different altcoins. You know, and I would argue that there's probably, you know, 100 or a few hundred developers that actually know what they're doing, that care enough to get in this space and do stuff. So it's going to boil down, condense, and, you know, a lot of it will go away, but there will be still a few front runners. I don't think it'll be one. I think it'll be a few that stick around. You know, and that all depends on who's able to dig in deep enough when the time comes.
I have a curiosity. So what made you such a Boy Scout cowboy, coder, hacker, when folks lost their money? Was it the scripting challenge or the ability to contribute to a redistributive social good? How do you interpret your actions in that way, from both the technical and the social?
That was all my mommy. So, you know, obviously I was raised to have a better moral and ethical standpoint than many people in the world who would just quickly take money from anyone, you know. I empathize. I don't like that happening to me. I wouldn't appreciate that happening to myself. So, I have the power to go and help people. Let me get out there and actually do something good. So that's part of it. And I guess the last part of it is, I do want to contribute to the space and help bring it, into a better place and kind of, leave a piece of me in there. It's all part of it. It's a challenge. It's fun. I'm kind of locked in at this point. I've spent so much time on it, so many sleepless nights.
Most exciting use case.
Most exciting use case. Well, so recently I've seen a coin that is primarily for gambling, and so you can hop right on the wallet, get some coins, and go play poker. Other than that, there were a couple projects that popped up that said they would provide users with a way to use their coins to purchase real estate or rent real estate, lease it out, something like that. So like maybe an Airbnb type of thing, or even just you go and you just buy a building somewhere. So that to me is really super interesting. But other than that, outside of the currency space, I would say definitely either tracking medical statistics, because you have so many different people inputting information about some patient somewhere, and they're writing it down, and someone else is listening to it, putting it into a computer or whatever. It could be lost in so many numerable places. Like if the technology is in place and the provider sees their patient and helps them and immediately puts that into this ledger, and that can't be lost. I think that's like super useful. Is that it? All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
You have a question ready for this? Yeah, come over. All right, cool. See, I told you it was a great talk. Was I right or wrong? That's what I'm talking about. Let's get it. All right, so here's the giveaway part. We got a real cool prize. So it's a $50 ebook gift certificate for No Starch Press. I know somebody's excited for that. I'm excited, but I can't, But all right, so we got Joe. It's kind of like a trivia type thing. Whoever shoots their hand up, answers a question right, you're gonna win this. All right. Keep it pretty simple. Pass it over back to Joe.
Thank you. So I totally forgot that I was supposed to do this. I'm just pulling this out of my hat, to put it nicely. What is the designation for mining style of blockchains versus masternodes, let's say? The designation for paying out rewards for mining discovery versus masternodes. Yes? I don't think that's right, sir. You shut your mouth. All right, maybe I should think of. I'll think of a new question, but you can guess. But proof of work or something? That's right, sir. Okay. I know it was a rough question. I'm sorry.
I'll take you that coupon. That's fine.
Let's see. Does anyone know the name of the example project I used that was hacked this year?
Oh, nice.
There you go. All right. Thanks for playing, folks.
Let's get it. I knew we got somebody in here. I'll bring it over to you. Don't worry, I got you. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. Like I said, we can't do this without you guys. Just make it worth doing. We do have another one planned for next month. I will have a newsletter coming out very soon for that. We're also looking for submissions for talks, or if you're interested in having a talk for that, it will all be in the newsletter. We'll have a form and all that ready for you guys to go. Am I missing anything? I don't think so. That's it. Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. Awesome. Thank Joe. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.